Down in Houston in the Museum of Fine Arts, there's a painting there named Recognition. It's a painting by a man named Constant Mayer, who painted it at the end of the Civil War. And this painting shows an injured Confederate soldier coming upon a dead Union soldier at the end of a battle. And the recognition that takes place is that as he happens upon this dying enemy soldier, he recognizes that this enemy of his is actually his own brother. It's a powerful painting that shows to us how so often those that we battle against, that we fight against, that we consider our enemy, if we look closer, if we kind of put down our weapons and make ourselves vulnerable, we tend to recognize that that person is our brother or our sister, that we have so much in common with them, we connect with them. A similar recognition takes place in our first reading today, that David and Saul are enemies fighting against each other. Saul seeking to put David to death because he has become so much more popular among the people. And yet in this moment where Saul is asleep and sort of delivered into David's hands, David, drawing close, recognizes that this is not my enemy, but rather he recognizes Saul as the Lord's anointed one, as the king. He sees in Saul not just his enemy, but he sees in Saul the Lord's anointed. He sees in Saul the image of his God, and so he does not harm him. Both of these stories lead us to an idea that is powerful and yet so often forgotten. And that is the idea that is put down in Scripture time and time again, that you and I, each one of us, are created in the image and likeness of God, that each of us bears God's image in some way. And through that, we are deeply brothers and sisters in this human race. And it is when we come to that realization, when we come to see one another as brothers and sisters, as bearers of God's image, when we come to recognize not just the things that make us enemies, but when we draw closer and recognize our brothers and sisters, that then we are able to carry out this very difficult but very beautiful teaching of Jesus in our gospel today. He tells us to love our enemies. I hear in the confessional time and time again, and I see it in my own life, how difficult that is to love one's enemies, to pray for those who persecute you, to offer the other cheek to those who strike you. So often we feel that we are deserving in one way or another of vengeance, of retribution, of putting the other in their place. But what the Lord calls us to is a teaching that is far more difficult than that, and yet it is precisely the teaching that our world needs. It is not to strike back against our enemies, but instead to draw closer to them, to look them in the eyes, to put down our weapons, to become vulnerable for a moment, and to see in our enemy our brother or our sister, to see one who bears the image of Christ, one who is made in the image and likeness of God. Because when we do that, then our enemies turn to true friends. Jesus tells us today, what good is it if you love only those who love you? if you see the image of God only in those who are good to you, if you treat others as brothers and sisters only when they are kind to you, what good is it? A far better way is what Jesus teaches us today, a far better way to live, a way of life that is not led by vengeance and hatred, but by love and recognition of the good in all of us. When I was young, I had the opportunity to take a mission trip to Mexico. I was in high school, and it was my first time outside of the country. And what I found remarkable, and especially even more so as I learned the Spanish language and was able to converse with people, is how remarkably similar we all are on this world. That all of us want the same things, desire the same things, to love and to be loved, to have a secure place in this world, to know God, and to enjoy the beauty of this world. All of us seek those same things, and yet so often what we put into our mind, what we make up, is that others are wholly different than us, that they are some sort of alternate type of human being. And yes, we have different ways of living out these desires. We have different cultures and backgrounds. And we so often, each of us, find poor ways of pursuing these goods of life. But aren't we all so similar in all of that? And so what the Lord calls us to today is to recognize that image in each person on this earth. That each of us, made in the image and likeness of God, are brothers and sisters. And so it is in that realization, holding on to that core truth that Jesus reveals to us, that then we are able to love our enemies.